Hey all, my name is Luke. I make bags from high-performance materials that would otherwise be discarded, and today I'm back with another episode in the boat project series. In this one, I'm going to be working on building the rudder. So if you might have remembered the last video, if you saw in the last little bit of it, I was chopping up an old Cascade 36 rudder that my neighbor Tom had in his yard, and the interior of it was not in the best of shape. It was a little wet, and upon further inspection, these reinforcement bars, they're stainless steel tubes, were pretty rusted out, especially at the joint with the rudder post itself. So first step here was to grind all those guys off and get it ready for some new ones. So I'm also cleaning up the rudder post a little bit here to get it smoothed out. All right, day one of going over to Tom's shop to make a rudder for the boat. He's got the mold over there that we're going to use for, it's a Cascade 36 rudder. And yeah, day one of this long commute from the tiny house behind me here all the way across this field to Tom's house. So walking across the field to Tom's, get the rudder post in the mill that he's got over there. And yeah, just again, so lucky to have him as a neighbor. I never would have taken this project on without him, his wife Jeannie, and my buddy Chris. Their support and expertise and knowledge and just their willingness to help is invaluable. And he lets me use all his crazy nice machines, shows me how to use them, and I do my best to learn as much as I can from them. So once I drilled out all those things, we took it over to another nearby neighbor who welded on the new sticks. So we got the new stainless steel reinforcement bars in there nice and tight, and then getting these two halves of the mold ready for the layup process. So here's my nice new paint gun from 3M that Tom is using. I'm really happy with it so far. I can't wait to use it more when it comes time to paint the boat. Anyway, here is a bunch of vinyl ester and a bunch of layers of biax fiberglass on either side of the mold. We'll sandwich them together to make one piece. It's going to be really strong. Hey guys, it's your boy Luke, going over for day two of the rudder build today. So day two was trimming off all the excess from the layup the day before to make sure when we do put the two pieces of the sandwich together, there's no air gaps and everything is nice and smooth. And also cleaning up all these little channels that Tom built into this mold, because that's what we're going to be pouring the expanding foam into. And there's also some little channels for air to escape. So getting everything waxed up so that the pieces of the mold that we don't want to stick together don't. Obviously we want the part to come out easily, and that's what that wax is for. So getting everything lined up, and now it's time to pour a bunch of vinyl ester into the mixing cup. And here is the NEKP going in, so get about 1% of that to the vinyl ester, mix it all up, and chemical reactions do their magic. And we add some of this powder, I believe it's called Cabicil, and it just thickens it up to make a nice kind of peanut buttery substance. And then we go ahead and spread that on the leading edge, the trailing edge, and on all the little spots where the metal bars are going to be resting to make sure that they have a nice little bed of thickened vinyl ester. So now, yeah, we got the rudder post in there. It's laying in there nicely on a nice bed of thickened vinyl ester. And here comes the other part of the mold to make the sandwich. And yeah, we got a bunch of layers of fiberglass on either side, thickened vinyl ester, and the rudder post in the middle of the sandwich. And then it was time to clamp it all together, because when we pour the expanding foam in there, it wants to expand in all directions. So it's really important that Tom did a really good job of building this mold so that it's really strong, and clamp it all together so that it doesn't move once we start pouring in that foam. So after a couple hours, that thickened vinyl ester hardened nicely, and it was time to start mixing up this 2-part 3-pound polyurethane foam. And this stuff it's pretty crazy. It's kind of magical. You mix it together, and then, I don't know, 3 minutes maybe later, it starts really expanding, and it doubles in size, triples, quadruples, quintuples, it's just like expands to much more than its original volume. And that's what we're using here to pour into these channels that Tom built into the mold. Air is escaping out of there. It doesn't smell great, so I tried to keep my face out of right there, because yeah, it just doesn't smell all that good. So we just kept making small batches and pouring them in there one at a time until it started overflowing, and that's how we knew it was full. So that foam does go off pretty quickly, but let it sit overnight to make sure, gave it as much time as possible. So the next day I came back over and took all the clamps off, got a little crowbar, and started prying the molds apart to see the kind of part that we made here. And thanks to Tom, it turned out pretty well. But I probably could have done this in a smarter way now, just like making this as difficult as possible. So that's fun. Just a struggle fest. But it worked out okay in the end, and it was really smooth because you got that wax and that PVA mold release stuff on there, so it's just really, really slippery and a really good looking part thanks to Tom's master mold making skills. So next I was chopping off the little bits of foam and getting rid of the PVA with some hot water, and then brought the Rotex over to grind it up to get it ready for the next step, which is going to be glassing the top and the bottom, as well as getting some big old pieces of biax to turn this 2-part piece into one solid part by just glassing over the entire thing. So here I'm getting rid of the little spots where the foam was poking out, making sure I got a nice substrate to laminate to. So just really making sure that I'm sanding it with some 36 grit sandpaper to make sure there's a nice mechanical bond there. Mixing up some West System epoxy now. So yeah, that first step was with vinyl ester. Now we're switching to West System epoxy, and 2 layers of biax, and then 5 or 6 layers of 10-ounce going over the tube and on top. So this was my first time working with 10-ounce. I've only really been using carbon fiber and biax so far, and I was really pleased with how 10-ounce molds to shapes and how satisfying it is to squeegee it over edges and stuff. It looks really satisfying. And I've been watching videos of people making surfboards, and to me that skill is just amazing, and it's just super satisfying to watch people do that. So anyway, got the top done, and then I got the bottom done next, and here you can see some peel ply on top of it. I've also been working on the engine compartment a little bit, so making this little knockout area there you can see for the alternator. The way that the boat came, the alternator was almost rubbing against the wall, and I want to make space for a bigger one and sound insulation. Oh, and also this carbon fiber bench for the dinghy. So back to the rudder now, and tearing all the paper off and grinding back a bit to make sure that we got a nice surface to put all this glass on. So here we go with the big pieces of glass. We did 2 pieces of biax and 1 piece of 10-ounce on this, and Tom's got this method for doing rudders where he's got a stick, and then we clamp the thing to the table saw, and then as you can see here, we can kind of turn it once we get one side laid down, and flip it over so then we can wet out the other side nicely, and then flip it up, put the stick underneath the rudder, and then we have a flat surface to squeegee the biax onto. So anytime you're working like this, you get better leverage, and it's just easy to make sure you get all the bubbles out. And yeah, it just seems like a good way to do it. I would not have thought of doing this if I was doing it on my own. I would have just been doing it against, you know, a vertical surface instead of on a horizontal surface like Tom's got figured out here. So again, thankful for more Tom's tips and tricks. And sorry that my butt's kind of hanging out in all these shots. I have since figured out that I can reinforce these Tyvek suits by just using some shipping tape on that butt seam before I even put them on, because literally the first time you bend over, it just rips. I had made myself a full suit a couple months back out of some spare fabric I had in the shop, but then I got a bunch of resin on the zipper and I was like, is this really worth all this effort? But anyway, back to the rudder. Here we're getting some peel ply on the almost finished product, I guess, and making sure we got a nice clean finish, making sure you get all the air bubbles out of there. And yeah, peel ply just leaves you with such a nice surface that you don't necessarily need to grind. You could just paint over the top of it if you wanted to. So here I am peeling it off. After I got that peel ply off and knocked over the GoPro, I was grinding away the top and the bottom and the edges just to make sure everything is smooth, there's no high spots, and it was time to take it home. So next little bit is to do some epoxy fairing on it. And other than that, I've also been working in the cockpit here, just getting rid of all this extra stuff that we don't need, sanding it down to bare carbon. And yeah, they just did a really good job building this boat down at Westerly back in the late 90s. Anyway, so the next step is to make sure I got the drawings all good for the cockpit, and adding bulkheads, adding the cockpit floor, steering wheel pedestals, hatches, storage areas. So yeah, it's a big project, and it's what I'm hoping to get done as the next big thing. So thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you guys in the next one.